Hey guys, if you like what you've seen in this video, go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. And if you want to see more, subscribe. And as always, comment below and tell us what you think. Today on Carcass, we finish off our Autocross Camaro with an Aero package before weaving it in and out of turns on the track. You're watching Carcass.
When you want to build something different, you turn to Carcass. They transform cars and trucks into one-of-a-kind builds. From street to mud. If you dream it, they can build it. This is Carcass, a non-traditional speed shop.
Our 25th Anniversary Camaro has seen a bunch of improvements since we last took it out to NCM Motorsports Park in Bowling Green, Kentucky. We started by ripping out the old power plant and replacing it with over 400 ponies that we got from the guys down in Engine Power.
And we backed those up with a Gearstar Turbo 400 transmission, sending all that power to the wheels. And speaking of wheels, we mounted up some Continental Extreme Contact Sport tires on some Weld Racing forged wheels we got from Summit Racing.
With all that horsepower, we added a little bit of life insurance with the prefabbed roll cage. And then we added some racing style seats. Then we directed our attention underneath the vehicle.
We did a suspension overhaul to prevent this thing from steering like a bulldozer on the track. This included adjustable coilovers front and rear, and even a new axle with 373 gears.
And finally, with the new stance of this combo, we took a set of universal fender flares and tweaked them to give our Camaro a fast, new look.
To go along with the fender flares we installed on our 92 Camaro, we're gonna make a front and rear Aero package to match.
In the rear, we're gonna get rid of the cheesy spoiler that really wasn't doing much good anyways, and replace it with an aluminum spoiler Jimmy and I are gonna fabricate to help with rear downforce.
And up here, we're gonna make a splitter to help with front downforce, and we're gonna make it out of materials you might not have thought you could make a splitter from.
But before we can lay down some serious track times on the course, we're gonna have to install the hood that we got from Summit Racing and bolt in the exhaust we got from Holley Performance.
So the first thing to come off is that cheesy spoiler.
The spoiler is held on with a couple easy to find nuts and some that are hidden under some plastic plugs. And what was waiting for us when we pulled off this 28-year-old spoiler was, well, oh, it's nasty.
To make this job easier, we're gonna separate the deck lid from the back glass. After removing the plastic trim from under the deck lid, we unbolted the nuts that hold on the bracket with the window struts and that sandwich the lid and glass together.
It's coming. Applying a little pressure to the deck lid releases the butyl tape that seals the lid and glass together. Sticky.
And a razor blade helps clean the excess tape off the rear glass.
With the deck lid off, we'll trace it out on a sheet of 90 thousandths aluminum. Then we'll cut out the shape with a jigsaw, making sure we follow our line as close as possible.
To mount the first piece of our spoiler to our deck lid, we'll have to drill some holes in a very specific location.
Do about 3 15/16.
This way the hardware that holds this cover down won't interfere with the back glass.
So here's a little tip. We're using our Matco Tools step drill, and it's got a bunch of steps on the edge of the drill bit to get to its final size. So when I drill through the aluminum like this, I'm not gonna go all the way through because I can reach to the bottom side, use the step part of the drill. That way, I don't have any burrs on the top or the bottom. We'll transfer the holes from our cover onto the deck lid with a marker. Then we'll just drill them out. We'll use light pressure to make sure that we don't distort or dent the top sheet metal of the lid. With our cover in place, we'll add some hardware and then just snug it up for now.
For the rest of the mounting holes, we'll utilize most of the original holes from the stock spoiler, adding 2 additional holes on the edge of the deck lid. We'll follow that up with some hardware to keep it all together.
Right, sir. $1 million question here. How tall do we make the spoiler?
Maybe like 5 or 6.
I say 6 inches. There's really no rhyme or reason to that, though.
Yeah, I mean, unless we could actually do like a scientific test It'll probably do something if we have something here,
yeah,
but it'll look cool.
Right, it'll look totally cool.
Yeah.
And then I think we'd talked like 20 degrees off of vertical, right?
Yeah, something like that.
All right, I think that's something I can totally handle. Over at the shear, we'll mark out our spoiler using the same 90 thousandths aluminum. We're making our mark at 7 inches. This allows for a 1-inch overhang on the bottom of our newly installed deck lid cover.
Coming up, a few pieces of aluminum to give the rear of our Camaro a brand new look.
Plus a splitter out front to go along with it. You're watching Carcass. We've disassembled and pried back the deck lid free from our Camaro. And now we're ready to add the aluminum spoiler we've been working on. We're going with a 20-degree angle with a 1-inch overhang, which looks like less near the edge due to the curved nature of the deck lid.
With Jeremy holding the spoiler in position, we're ready to weld the aluminum pieces using the AC setting on the TIG machine. We'll start with a tack on one end and use an angle finder to ensure we are at the correct angle. Tacking on the opposite end to hold everything in place.
Now we set our spoiler at 13 degrees. That's different than what we talked about when we were over on the car. Well, there's a reason for that. When the deck lid sits on the car, it sits at a 7-degree angle. When we put the deck lid on the table, we set this at a true 0. That's what these 2 wooden blocks are for. So when we set our deck lid back on our Camaro at the 7 degrees, we add the 13 degrees of our angle for our spoiler. That'll give us the 20 degrees we're looking for.
We're gonna add a few more tacks to ensure our spoiler isn't gonna move on us. Then we can expand those tacks, laying down a 3-inch long bead to permanently affix the spoiler.
To finish off our spoiler, we're going to add some turnbuckle supports to help prevent our aluminum from bending out of alignment. We chose 7.5 inches from the edge to drill out the hole for our first support. Measuring 7.5 inches from each end, we measured the distance between the 2 locations, 39 inches in our case. We divided that by 3, giving us equal spacing for all of our turnbuckle supports.
With all the base holes spaced out, we need to install one end of the support and locate where we'll drill the hole for the top. We can then drill that out and chamfer the backside to accommodate the bolt heads. From here, it's just rinse and repeat.
Our spoiler is now ready to be reinstalled on the Camaro, and since we kept the original deck lid, all the bolts line up, making for a super simple install. We just wrapped up the rear spoiler install on the Autocross Camaro, which in theory should give us better track times and more downforce.
So to get more downforce in the front, we're going to be building a splitter. And to do that, we're going to be using tools that a carpenter might use and using materials you'd more likely find in your house than on your car. To make our splitter, we're using a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. The reason for that is because splitters are considered to be consumable. When you're out on a real road course and your car is low enough to the ground, there's a good chance that when you go through the curbs and turns or hit a really hard braking zone that the splitter is going to hit the ground. All those impacts and that scuffing can cause it to deteriorate or break over time. And the best part about using wood is that it's really cheap and you can just go to your local hardware store and get another piece.
With the plywood under the car, we're using a plumb bob to transfer the shape of our bumper. The trick is to let the plumb bob stop moving at each point.
With the shape of the bumper mapped out, we'll move the plywood over to a tabletop to make the rest of this process easier. We're going to use a compass set to 5.5 inches to create the lip on our splitter. For each mark we made with the plumb bob, we're going to make a matching mark 5.5 inches away. This will create our cut line. At this point, all the dots have been connected, and now we're near one end of the splitter. but we don't want the splitter to stick out past the edge of the fender flare. So Jeremy actually marked the edge of the fender flare here, and we're gonna taper it from the edge of the curve of the bumper all the way to the edge of the flare, just using a straight line.
With our handy jigsaw, we'll carefully cut along the line. You'll notice on the bottom we have a nice clean cut, but along the top we're left with a lot of tear out. We're not worried about this because we're gonna hit it with a 7-inch air grinder and a 36 grit sanding disc. This will clean up the tear out and allow us to shape the rounded corners of the splitter. Ordering parts online for your vehicle can be a challenge, and ordering the right part can be extremely time-consuming. While when Jimmy and I wanted to replace the worn-out window sweeps on our Camaro, we didn't want to spend a bunch of time searching through a bunch of websites to make sure we get the right part. Well, Rock Auto makes it simple by doing all the hard work for us. All we had to do was type in our 92 Camaro, click on the body tab, scroll down to find our part, and add it to the cart. It's a fast and simple way to make sure we get the right part, and it'll finish off the look of our Camaro.
Up next, we finish off the Aero package with some fabricated mounts, and we'll show you how we plan to seal off the gaps. Next on Carcass.
Oh yeah, that bracket should work. It's pretty simple too. These should work for the front. I think I got some more, but I gotta go take a look.
Cool. During the break, we made one set of the brackets to hold the splitter to our Camaro. This bracket, one side will get welded directly to the radiator support and it'll sit just like this. This bracket has 2 holes that'll get bolted directly to the splitter, and it's got a slot at the top. These 2 brackets combined will allow us to adjust the height of the splitter to whatever we need. Now, we've already made one side, but we're going to show you guys how to make the other side. We'll start by making the bracket that will get welded to the radiator support. We're using 2-inch by 1/8 inch thick strapping, cutting an 8-inch long section on the Edwards Ironworker.
Back at the bench, we'll mark out 1.5 inches from each end, moving over to the Edwards horizontal press to bend roughly a 60-degree angle to match the first bracket. Then we'll flip it over and bend another 60-degree angle, giving us the shape we need.
At the bench, we'll use our trusty center punch to mark our hole locations, using a 3/8 inch bit to drill out the holes.
With one of our matching brackets done, we'll move on to the plate that will attach to the splitter and allow for vertical adjustment. Using a 5x6 piece of 1/8 inch steel, we'll measure 2.5 inches in to mark the center. Then with it rotated and the piece hanging over the edge of the table, we'll measure in 1 inch for our bend line.
From the center line, we'll measure 1 3/4 inches on both sides. With those lines extended to the edge, we'll locate our holes 3/8 of an inch from the edge. This bend and subsequent holes will allow us to attach the bracket to the splitter.
With the plate flipped around, we'll mark out the area that will attach the bracket we just made. Since we made it out of 2-inch wide strap, we'll mark out a 2-inch wide area to match. With that area marked out, this is where things get a little arbitrary. We're trimming this plate down so it makes sort of a triangle shape. So we measured in 1 3/4 inches from the edge and then just connected the dots.
With our overall shape figured out, we need to figure out where the slot will go, allowing us to adjust the splitter height. We went with a 1/2 inch from the edge for the top of the slot and 2 1/8 inches for the bottom, giving us just over 1.5 inches of adjustment.
We'll mark out all the holes for a sanity check and use a 10mm socket to give us a line to sneak up on when we go round off the corners. Then we can begin drilling all the holes out using the drill press and a 3/8 inch drill bit.
Next, we'll cut all the waste away with a cutoff wheel. Like we said, we're making this into kind of a triangle shape so everything outside the lines can go.
We'll follow that up with cutting the slot and clean it up with a die grinder.
Whoops. At the belt sander, we can round off the corners and make the bend for our flange that connects to the splitter back at the horizontal press.
With our brackets made, we can get started assembling the splitter. The first bracket is welded to the radiator support. Then we can measure the distance between the two brackets.
41.
This measurement will determine where we place the second bracket on the plywood.
With our bracket holes marked out, we can drill each hole and insert the hardware that will hold our second bracket onto the plywood splitter, tightening everything up.
With our brackets installed, it's time to marry the two together. We'll line up the slotted hole on the splitter with the bolt hole on the first bracket, leaving the hardware loose for now.
These brackets won't be the only thing holding the splitter in place. In lieu of using cabling like some of the pros do, we're going to install this nut we welded to a larger washer.
Then we can pass the threaded rod through the splitter, add a jam nut, and thread it into the nut and washer combo, securing it in place with the jam nut.
Now that we have the main structure done for our splitter, we need to build an air dam so we can actually force air to hit the top of it. Because when air hits the front of the car, air will go up and air will go down. The air that goes down on top of the splitter will put force on the front two tires.
Now this won't work unless we close the air gap between the splitter and the bumper. So we'll be sticking to our plan using readily available and disposable materials. We opted for some no-dig edging. This stuff is flexible enough to work in the corners, but stiff enough to withstand the forces of the air we'll be putting on it.
With the tab installed on the splitter, we can install it again on the Camaro, adding the remainder of the edging, screwing the bottom to the first layer of edging and the top to the bumper. So to explain how our Aero kit works, we'll start at the front. When air hits the front of the car, it's either going to go up or it's going to go down. The air that goes down will hit all the surface area on our front splitter, providing downforce on the front two tires. But the back is a little bit more complicated. When air flows over our Camaro without a spoiler, it just kind of flies off the back, but the spoiler changes things up. The spoiler acts like a wall and it slows the air in front of it down. When air slows down, the pressure increases, and the increased pressure on the deck lid provides force on our rear tires.
Coming up, we hit the pavement and put our Autocross Camaro to the test. Next on Carcass.
We're back here at NCM Motorsports Park with our Autocross Camaro, and the last time we were here with this vehicle, we tested it out bone stock on a course made up of a few hundred cones.
The last time, Jimmy and I each ran a couple laps with our best time being about 48 seconds. Well, we're here today to best that time with 408 horsepower, a completely overhauled suspension, wider tires to grip the pavement, and a sleek Aero package that should provide some downforce when we're hammering it through the corners. Now, instead of running this course cold turkey, Jimmy and I are both going to run the course twice, and then our producer is going to reveal the results at the end of the day.
That's a lot faster than it was before. All right. This thing feels stuck to the ground. I feel like I'm carrying a lot more speed too. Now, the first time out here, I was still having fun in a third gen, but I can tell you, this is a lot more fun.
How was it?
It was way better than last time, I'll say that. It's, I'm ready for a second run.
Yeah,
what
you're
it can
killing
really
it
do.
out there. Go for it, man.
Awesome. Compared to our old stock tires, these 295 series Continental Extreme Contact Sport tires probably made the biggest difference for me on this course. You want to talk about having fun in a third gen? This is the car. This is so fantastic.
Yeah, hey dude, speaking of having fun, get out of there. It's my turn to take it for a spin. This thing is absolutely stuck to the pavement. The suspension is unbelievable right now. And it's just absolutely hammering it. Wow. That's a completely different car. This is 100% a completely different car. One lap down, one to go. Oh man, this thing is just running out like $1 million. All right, man, results are in, and there's no way you're gonna believe this. I ran a 41.78, and Jimmy, he wrote it down right here, Jimmy ran a 42.25.
That's sad.
I actually beat him in something. First time this year, I beat you in something.
I'm really happy for you, actually, but that's all I have to say about that. Moving on to the car, I'm amazed that this thing got as fast as it did with, you know, the upgrades we did to it.
Oh yeah, from the upgraded horsepower, I mean 408, 410 horse, we've got way different suspension, really wide tires, and the Aero package had to do something because we are way quicker than we were before.
Yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. I think this car's just
either.
Bananas.
Totally. If you guys like anything we've done with the build or want to see anything more with the build, why don't you go check out PowerNationTV.com, and as always,
You're watching Carcass.